I can't believe I'm about to do this. Look, I've been fairly critical of the first two books in the He Who Fights with Monsters series. Yes, I did call Jason Asano the most unlikable protagonist to ever stain the page. A bit of an over exaggeration, but grounded in reality, my subjective reality anyway. With book three, while many of my previous criticisms still stand and are in fact enhanced, my biggest complaints have been addressed, and I'm stunned, quite frankly. I thought I'd be dropping the series after this book, but I don't think I can because it got good, god damn it, and now I don't know what to do.
No fluff writing advice. Cut the fluff!
Oh, don't worry, I still have plenty of critiques for He Who Fights with Monsters Book 3, so before we get into the good, the long overdue improvements to the series, let's discuss where Book 3 still falls monstrously short. Firstly, for a large chunk of the beginning of the book, it feels like there's no plot. Are we going after the Builder or some other big threat or anything? No, we're just hanging about, training, getting stronger. For the first few chapters, I think it was up until chapter 7, I was fully starting to wonder if book 3 was just abandoning the main plot to focus on side quests indefinitely. Eventually, it does get back on track, and that's when the story starts to get good. However, among it all, we get buried in exposition. Info dump after info dump, just defecating info all over the place. We even get some full character bios for some reason, like the author wrote rough bios for certain characters during the planning phase, then just copy and pasted them, dumped them into the manuscript. She'll be right. Readers hate it when you subtly weave exposition into the narrative. They much prefer to have it all dumped on them at once, again and again and again and again and again. Anyway, I'm not one of these people who says always show, never tell. Sometimes showing too much can bog down the narrative or feel forced and unnatural. He Who Fights with Monsters doesn't have that problem because it seems determined to tell as much as possible, whenever possible, even when it shouldn't be possible. Sometimes it feels like you're reading a summary of a story instead of the actual story. Even some of the action scenes, no, especially some of the action scenes, almost feel like exposition, like you're reading a battle report after the fact instead of experiencing the scene itself. It breaks immersion and, oh sweet mother of God, which God, I don't know, you decide. But sucking all the momentum out of an action scene with long, detailed, pointless ability descriptions is a genre trope that needs to die a quick death. Here's a few paragraphs of exposition because you need to know how these abilities work right now in the middle of the fight. After all, momentum and tension are too stressful, and we don't want to stress anyone out now, do we? Well, I'm stressed out now. Then by the time you get through the walls of exposition, it's like, wait, where are we again? Why are we fighting? Wasn't I reading an essay? It's hard to create tension when it keeps stopping mid-fight to read the tooltip for every ability used. Why is this unironically a thing? Yes, I will poke fun at this trope in my next novel. Okay, so a lot of the overtelling is just common mistakes newer writers make, like, for example, restating facts that are already apparent. One example, at one point it says something like, Jason forcibly changed the conversation. After Jason forcibly changes the conversation. Just let the action speak for itself. I'm moving on to my next point now, just thought you should know. Oh, well, I didn't expect that. I appear to have run out of critiques. Alright, let's say some nice things about He Who Fights with Monsters Book 3. Firstly, magic system, super creative, interesting, fun. I've said it all before, but I think the series deserves some re-praise. The world building in general is compelling and creative, and probably the series' biggest strength. Oh, aside from the secondary characters. I love how the secondary characters have developed over the first three books, not just individually, but also in the context of the team. Plenty of top tier banter. I had a chuckle or two, maybe three, possibly four chuckles or more. Describing carrying Neil around like a piece of luggage. How could you not laugh at that? The narration as part of the equation. I don't know if I'm just getting used to the narrator Heath Miller's style or if he's improved since the first two books, but I found his deliveries landing better for me in book 3. Am I imagining that? I know people reread or re-read this series a lot, so if anyone else noticed or didn't notice an improvement, let me know. Could just be Stockholm Syndrome. Okay, on to Jason. As much as I've criticized him as a character, in the end, he does tend to bring out, well, the worst in his enemies, but the best in his friends. Clive's come right out of his shell. Sophie's become less antisocial, a little less antisocial. Humphrey's become more confident in his leadership. Neil's letting his true personality shine through. And Belinda might be the only secondary character who hasn't had a lot of development, but she also doesn't get a lot of page time, and I almost forgot she's a part of the team. Hopefully she gets her time to shine in the next book, or any book, at some point. We'll see. Side note, I'm not sold on Jason's familiar Gordon. He seems kind of pointless and uninteresting. Shade has personality, and Colin gets his time to shine in book 3. But what's the point of Gordon? Maybe getting two new familiars at the same time wasn't ideal because one has overshadowed, no pun there, the other. Or maybe Gordon has a future purpose, I don't know. Okay, let's talk more about Jason, the most unlikable protagonist to ever... I can't even say it anymore. In book 2, we got a little more insight into his true character and psychology, but book 3 goes much deeper. As a character, he expresses more self-awareness, even though the part where he lists all his faults feels a little forced, a little ham-fisted. Oh no, not hams for fists. It does help humanize him. He's acting less like a self-appointed god and more like the mere mortal he is. I will say, the more Jason progresses, the harder it will be to convince people he doesn't have evil powers. At what point does he just own it?
Alright, yep, you got me. I do indeed have evil powers. Boo.
So, for a big chunk of the book, Jason is the same self-satisfied douche dingle, but finally, he gets truly challenged in a way he hasn't since the beginning of book 1. This has been my biggest complaint about the series until now. He's always the cleverest person in the room, breezes through every battle, no one can rival his wit, but finally, he meets his match. Jason goes through hell and afterwards he's changed. I can barely believe it. He becomes more humble. And I don't think it's just the result of that one event. It's been happening over time. For example, when the team's adventuring with Henrietta Geller, we see Jason get put in his place a few times and he takes it well. And the more Jason gets challenged, the humbler he becomes. You can see that the previous cockiness was an act, but he kept winning, getting ahead with that cockiness. In my opinion, he should have been cut down much earlier in the series. Until book 3, there are no real consequences. Oh, but there are consequences aplenty now. Maybe too many consequences. I didn't mean go that far. In my mind, Jason has always needed a worthy rival, and he doesn't get one until book 3 when the builder actually starts paying attention to him. And then, oh, what an epic final battle. See, looking back, the author does tend to write better fight scenes when it's humans versus humans or humans versus gods. Even though the series is called He Who Fights with Monsters, the monster battles are rarely tense, at least not as tense as the human fights. The intelligence of the opponent allows for more twists and turns. And of course, there's the banter. Look, while Jason does get humbled, he turns it back on for the baddies, which I appreciate. My point is, He Who Fights with Monsters needs less fighting with actual monsters. Fight people, fight gods, they're way more fun. Overall, we get big story arc payoffs in book 3. To get there, you've got to take the scenic route, but if you can push through, the journey might be worth the destination. For some people, maybe. You do see some earlier foreshadowing play out, and in the epilogue especially, we get some real emotional moments. I didn't expect that, but I'm not sold on the flashbacks at the end. I don't see what they add to the story unless they relate to a future book. It's hard to tell with some of these former web novels. Anyway, the ending of book 3 nicely sets up the next story arc. And to all those people who demanded that I read the first 3 books before passing judgment on the series, cheers, you were right. For the first 3 books, He Who Fights with Monsters is deeply flawed. In some parts, it's borderline unreadable. But in the end, book 3 gave me enough to want to continue the series. I can't believe it. I'm curious, okay? Among all the critiques, I've always mentioned the potential I see. Will that potential be realized? Book 3 almost got there, and oh, look at the time, gotta run. I have a date with Clive's wife, and you know how she is. If you enjoyed this video, hit subscribe. If you didn't enjoy this video, hit subscribe anyway, and hate watch my content. That's always fun.